Hey, beautiful souls. Are you ready for a journey from heartbreak to hope? From the ashes of rejection to the flames of true love? Tonight, we're diving deep into a world where the moon decides your fate, where ancient bloodlines hold deadly secrets, and where sometimes the mate bond gets it devastatingly wrong the first time around. I need you to buckle up because we're about to meet Bella Ravencrest, a woman whose world is about to shatter in the most brutal way possible. But here's what I want you to remember as we begin. Sometimes we have to lose everything to discover who we're truly meant to become. Are you with me? Then let's step into the Shadowmere territory on the night that changed everything. Chapter 1. The autumn moon hung like a silver blade over the Shadowmere Pack's ceremonial grounds, casting long shadows between the ancient oaks that had witnessed countless mate bond ceremonies. Isabella Ravencrest pressed her palms against the rough bark of her favorite tree, the same one where she'd carved her and Sebastian's initials 3 years ago, trying to steady her racing heart. Tonight was supposed to be the night, her 21st birthday, the night when the mate bond would fully manifest between her and Sebastian Darkmore, future alpha of the Shadowmere Pack. The night when all her dreams would finally become reality. She smoothed down her ceremonial white dress, the one her grandmother had worn, and her grandmother's grandmother before that. The ancient fabric whispered against her skin like a promise. Around her, pack members gathered in their finest clothes, their excited chatter filling the crisp night air with anticipation. Bella. The deep voice made her turn, and there he was, Sebastian Darkmore in all his devastating glory. 6 feet 3 inches of pure alpha power, with dark hair that caught the moonlight and those piercing ice-blue eyes that had haunted her dreams since childhood. Her wolf stirred restlessly beneath her skin, recognizing her intended mate. Sebastian. She stepped toward him, reaching for his hands. I can hardly believe it's finally happening. After all these years of waiting. He stepped back. The small movement hit her like a physical blow. Sebastian had never stepped away from her touch. Never. Sebastian. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. What's wrong? Around them, the pack began to form the traditional ceremony circle. Alpha Darkmore, Sebastian's father, stood at the center with the ancient mate-binding chalice, while Luna Margot offered Bella an encouraging smile that somehow felt forced. We need to talk, Sebastian said, his voice strangely formal. Before the ceremony, of course. Bella forced a laugh, though something cold was beginning to crawl up her spine. Pre-ceremony jitters. I know it's overwhelming, but I can't do this, Bella. The words hit her like silver bullets to the chest. The ceremonial circle continued forming around them, but suddenly everything felt distant, muffled, like she was drowning. Can't do what? But she knew. Oh, goddess. She knew. Sebastian's jaw tightened, and for just a moment she saw pain flash across his features before his expression hardened into something unrecognizable. I can't accept the mate bond. I won't claim you. The forest tilted sideways. Bella's knees nearly buckled, but her pride, that stubborn Ravencrest pride, kept her upright. Around them, pack members began to notice something was wrong. Whispers started, confused murmurs rippling through the gathered wolves. Why? The single word tore from her throat like a wounded animal's cry. Sebastian looked everywhere but at her. You're not strong enough to be Luna. The pack needs someone who can lead beside me. Someone who can handle the responsibility. Someone who... He gestured vaguely at her. Someone who isn't ordinary. The word hit her like a slap. Ordinary. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. The Ravencrest line carries ancient magic, little moonlight. Never let anyone make you feel ordinary. But standing here watching the man she'd loved since childhood destroy her with casual cruelty, ordinary was exactly how she felt. Bella, dear, is everything all right? Luna Margot approached, her face creased with worry. The pack had formed their full circle now, waiting. Expectant faces turned toward them. Friends, family, wolves who'd watched her grow up, believing she'd one day be their Luna. The weight of their attention felt crushing. No, Bella whispered, then louder, her voice carrying across the ceremonial grounds. No, everything is not all right. She turned to face the assembled pack and somehow found the strength to lift her chin. The Ravencrest bloodline might be considered minor by today's standards, but her ancestors had been proud wolves. Sebastian Darkmore has chosen to reject our destined mate bond, she announced, her voice like glass in her throat. He finds me ordinary. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone's mother whispered a prayer to the moon goddess. Alpha Darkmore's face darkened with what looked like embarrassment, or maybe anger. Sebastian finally met her eyes, and for just a second, she saw the boy she'd grown up with. The one who'd held her after nightmares, who'd promised they'd always be together. But then his alpha mask slipped back into place. "I'm sorry, Bella. This is for the good of the pack." She stood there for an eternal moment, surrounded by her pack, but feeling utterly alone. The mate bond she'd felt growing stronger over the years, that golden thread connecting her heart to his, began to wither. The pain was indescribable, like someone was slowly tearing her soul in half. But Bella Ravencrest was done begging. Fine. She stripped off her grandmother's ceremonial dress, letting it fall to the forest floor in a puddle of silver-white fabric. Underneath, she wore simple clothes, jeans and a sweater that suddenly felt like armor. "Then I reject you too, Sebastian Darkmore," she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. "I reject this pack that finds me ordinary, and I reject a future where I'm not enough." She shifted without warning, her wolf bursting free in an explosion of silver and shadow that sent several pack members stumbling backward. Her wolf was smaller than most, yes, but she was fast and fierce, with an unusual silver coat that seemed to shimmer with its own light. Standing on 4 legs, she threw back her head and howled, a sound so full of pain and rage and stubborn determination that it seemed to shake the very trees. Then, before anyone could stop her, she turned and ran. Behind her, she heard Sebastian call her name. But Bella Ravencrest was done listening to voices that told her she wasn't enough. She ran until her paws bled, until the familiar scent of Shadowmere territory faded behind her, until she crossed the border into the vast wilderness that stretched beyond Packlands. She ran until she couldn't run anymore, then collapsed beside a moonlit stream and let herself finally, truly break. But even as she cried for her lost love, her shattered dreams, her uncertain future, a small flame of defiance burned in her chest. She was Bella Ravencrest, granddaughter of Aurora Ravencrest, keeper of the old stories. Her bloodline might be considered minor, but it was ancient. There were secrets in her family line that even she didn't fully understand yet. Sebastian Darkmore thought she was ordinary. She'd show him. She'd show them all exactly how extraordinary an ordinary wolf could become. But first, she had to survive the night alone in territory she'd never seen before, with the scent of strange wolves drifting on the autumn wind. Chapter 2. Dawn was still hours away when Bella finally lifted her muzzle from her paws. The stream bubbled softly beside her, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called to its mate, a sound that sent a fresh spike of pain through her chest. She'd cried herself empty beside this little stream, her tears mixing with the clear water that reflected the waning moon. But now, as the initial shock began to fade, reality crept in with cold fingers. She was alone, truly alone, for the first time in her 21 years. No pack, no territory, no future she could see clearly. Bella shifted back to her human form, immediately regretting it as the autumn cold bit through her clothes. She grabbed the backpack she'd snatched before fleeing, some instinct making her grab it from her car. But she hadn't exactly packed for a wilderness survival adventure. Inside, a water bottle half empty, a granola bar, her phone, which showed no signal this deep in the forest. And tucked at the bottom, wrapped in soft cloth, her grandmother's journal. The one filled with stories about the old bloodlines and ancient pack magic. "Okay, Bella," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the stream. "You wanted to prove you weren't ordinary. Time to figure out how to survive." She followed the stream deeper into the unknown territory, figuring water would lead to some kind of civilization eventually. The forest here felt different from Shadowmere lands. Older somehow, with trees so massive their trunks could house entire families. The air hummed with a strange energy that made her wolf pace restlessly under her skin. Then she caught the scent. Wolves. Multiple wolves and clothes. Heart hammering, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper, Bella froze. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But she was exhausted, heartbroken, and frankly had nowhere left to run to. So instead, she lifted her chin and called out, "I know you're there. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just passing through." 3 wolves stepped out of the shadows. No, not wolves. They were in human form, but she could sense their beasts just beneath the surface, ready to emerge. 2 men and a woman, all tall and powerfully built, with an alertness that screamed border patrol. The woman stepped forward first, a striking brunette with amber eyes and scars across her knuckles that spoke of battles won. "You're on Ravenswood Ridge territory, little wolf," she said. "And you smell like—" She tilted her head, nostrils flaring. "Heartbreak and Shadowmere." "Former Shadowmere," Bella corrected, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "As of about 6 hours ago." One of the men, blond with kind eyes but a warrior stance, exchanged a look with his companions. "Rejected." The word hit like a physical blow, but Bella forced herself not to flinch. "Is it that obvious?" she asked. "The scent of a severed mate bond is distinctive," the brunette said, not unkindly. "I'm Sienna. This is Marcus and Drake. And you are?" "Bella." "Bella Ravencrest." All 3 border guards went very still. Sienna's amber eyes widened slightly, and she exchanged another look with Marcus. This one loaded with significance Bella couldn't interpret. "Ravencrest," Sienna repeated slowly. "As in the old bloodlines?" "The ones from the stories." "Aye, what stories?" Bella's grandmother had always hinted that their family line was special, but most packs considered the Ravencrests a minor bloodline. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I just need to get through your territory." "You're not going anywhere," came a voice from behind her. Bella spun around so fast she nearly lost her balance. Her breath caught in her throat. Standing at the edge of the clearing was the most magnificent man she'd ever seen. Tall and broad-shouldered with black hair that seemed to absorb moonlight, and eyes so dark they looked like pieces of the night sky itself. But it wasn't just his physical presence that made her wolf sit up and take notice. It was the power rolling off him in waves. Alpha. This man was an alpha. And not just any alpha. This was an alpha in his prime, radiating the kind of authority that made lesser wolves instinctively bare their necks. "Alpha Theron," Sienna said, immediately dropping into a respectful posture. "We found her by the stream." "She's—" "I know exactly who she is," Theron interrupted, his dark eyes fixed on Bella with an intensity that made her skin burn. "Bella Ravencrest. Shadowmere's cast off." Cast off. Like she was a piece of unwanted clothing. "I wasn't cast off," Bella snapped, her exhaustion making her reckless. "I chose to leave." Alpha Theron moved closer, and she caught his scent. Pine and leather and something wild that made her mouth go dry. "Did you? Or did Sebastian Darkmore finally grow a spine and acknowledge what everyone already knew?" And what exactly did everyone know? The words came out like shards of ice. His smile was sharp as a blade. "That you were never meant to be Luna. That your bloodline, however ancient, has been diluted over generations into something." His eyes raked over her dismissively. "Ordinary." There was that word again. Ordinary. Something snapped inside Bella's chest, not breaking this time, but igniting. Her wolf surged forward with a snarl, and power she didn't know she possessed crackled through the air around her. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant, and frost began forming on the grass at her feet. All 3 Ravenswood Ridge wolves took a step back. Sienna's eyes went wide with something that looked like awe, while Marcus and Drake dropped into defensive crouches. But Alpha Theron smiled like he just won a bet with himself. "Well," he said, his voice rich with satisfaction, "that's not ordinary at all, is it?" Bella stared at the frost spreading around her feet. She'd never done anything like this before. Never even knew she could. Her grandmother's journal suddenly felt like it was burning through her backpack. What just happened?" she whispered. "You just proved that Sebastian Darkmore is an even bigger fool than I thought," Alpha Theron replied. He stepped closer, seemingly unbothered by the supernatural cold radiating from her. "Tell me, little Ravencrest, what do you know about your family's true history?" My grandmother used to tell stories about the old magic, the first packs. But they were just stories, weren't they?" His hand reached out as if to touch her face, then stopped just short. "Your great-great-grandmother was Selene Ravencrest, the Moon Witch, the most powerful wolf magic user in recorded history." The world tilted again, but this time it wasn't from heartbreak. It was from the sudden, overwhelming sense that everything she thought she knew about herself was wrong. "That's impossible. We're nobody special. My father always said." "Your father was a fool who married into the bloodline and never understood what he'd gained," Alpha Theron said. His eyes gleamed in the moonlight. "But you're not him, are you, Bella? You're your grandmother's granddaughter. Aurora Ravencrest's blood runs in your veins. You knew my grandmother. I knew of her, and I know that she hid what she was to protect her family. But hiding time is over. He gestured to the frost still spreading at her feet. The magic is awakening whether you want it to or not. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Bella looked around at the three wolves watching her with expressions ranging from wariness to fascination. She thought about Sebastian, about his cruel dismissal, about the pack that had watched her humiliation without a single voice raised in her defense. She thought about her grandmother's journal burning against her back, full of secrets she'd never bothered to explore. And she thought about the frost at her feet, proof that she was anything but ordinary. "I'm going to learn," she said finally. "I'm going to learn everything I should have known all along." Alpha Theron's smile was predatory and approving. "Good. Then you'll be staying in Ravenswood Ridge." "I didn't agree to. You don't have a choice." His voice broke no argument. "A Ravencrest with awakening powers can't wander the wilderness alone. You'll either stay here where you can be trained properly, or I'll have you delivered to the Council for evaluation." The Council. Every wolf knew what that meant. Being studied like a lab rat. Powers tested and catalogued. Freedom stripped away in the name of safety. "And if I stay here?" she asked carefully. "Then you learn to control what's inside you. You discover what your bloodline is truly capable of. And maybe," his eyes glittered with something that might have been anticipation, "maybe you get your revenge on the pack that threw away the most valuable thing they ever had." Revenge. The words sent a thrill through her that probably should have been concerning. But as she stood there surrounded by frost and possibility, Bella found she didn't care about should-haves anymore. She'd spent her whole life trying to be good enough for Shadowmere, trying to fit into their vision of what a proper Luna should be. Maybe it was time to find out what she could become when she stopped trying to be what others wanted. "I'll stay," she said, "but I have conditions." Alpha Theron raised an eyebrow. "You're hardly in a position to make demands, are you?" She gestured to the frost-covered ground. "You want to train me? Fine. But I won't be a prisoner. I won't be anyone's project or experiment. And I won't be anyone's replacement for something they've lost." Something flickered in his dark eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or approval. "Fair enough," he said. "Welcome to Ravenswood Ridge, Bella Ravencrest. Tomorrow we start unlocking whatever your grandmother hid in that blood of yours. I have a feeling Sebastian Darkmore is going to regret his choice even more than he already does." As the Alpha disappeared back into the forest, Sienna approached cautiously. "Well," she said with a grin that was equal parts impressed and sympathetic, "welcome to the pack, Ice Queen. Something tells me things are about to get very interesting around here." Bella looked down at her frost-covered feet, then up at the moon hanging like a promise above the ancient trees of Ravenswood Ridge territory. Sebastian had called her ordinary. Her father had told her she was nobody special. But standing here with power crackling under her skin and secrets waiting to be unlocked, Bella Ravencrest was beginning to suspect they'd all been very, very wrong. The only question was, just how extraordinary could one ordinary wolf become? Dear listener, if this story has awakened something within you, if you felt every heartbreak and triumph alongside our Ice Queen, then don't let this journey slip away. Subscribe now, because the next chapter holds the ultimate test. Bella's training begins in earnest, ancient powers emerge, and a mysterious alpha draws closer with intentions neither of them fully understand. The real magic is about to unfold, and the stakes are about to become infinitely higher. Will Bella's newfound power be enough to heal her shattered heart, or will it only deepen the wounds? Subscribe, and let's discover together what happens when a woman learns to embrace the extraordinary woman she was always meant to be. The awakening is just beginning. Chapter 3. Bella woke to the smell of pine smoke and bacon, scents so different from the lavender and honey that had filled her childhood home that for a moment she forgot where she was. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back like ice water to the face. The rejection, the flight, the frost spreading at her feet like something out of a fairy tale. She sat up in the narrow bed, taking in her surroundings by morning light. Sienna had brought her to a small cabin on the edge of Ravenswood Ridge territory. Not pack housing exactly, but not exile either. A place for visitors, Sienna had explained with diplomatic care, or for dangerous unknowns who needed to be watched. "Bella, you awake there?" Sienna's voice carried warmth and something that might have been excitement. "Alpha wants to see you at first light. And honey, that sun's been up for an hour already." "Coming," Bella called, then winced at how rough her voice sounded. She'd cried more in the past 12 hours than she had in years. She splashed cold water on her face from the basin Sienna had left, trying to wash away the evidence of her breakdown. In the small mirror above the washstand, a stranger looked back at her. Same long silver blonde hair, same storm gray eyes, but there was something different now. Harder, like she'd shed some essential softness overnight. Sienna waited on the porch with 2 steaming mugs of coffee and a knowing smile. She was dressed in practical clothes, jeans, boots, a flannel shirt that had seen better days. But she moved with the fluid grace of a warrior. "Sleep at all?" Sienna asked, offering her one of the mugs. "Some," Bella replied, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic, letting the heat seep into her bones. "I keep expecting to wake up and find out this was all some horrible nightmare. The rejection or the magic?" The question was asked gently, but it still made Bella flinch. "Both. Either. I don't know anymore." Sienna's expression softened with understanding. "I know it doesn't feel like it now, but what happened to you might be the best thing that could have happened." Getting publicly humiliated and banished from my pack was the best thing? Bella couldn't quite keep the bitterness out of her voice. "Getting free of a pack that couldn't see your worth was the best thing," Sienna corrected firmly. "Trust me on this one. I've been where you are." Something in Sienna's tone made Bella look at her more carefully. There were old scars on the woman's knuckles. And now that she thought about it, Sienna had recognized the scent of a severed mate bond awfully quickly last night. "You were rejected too," Bella said, realization dawning. Sienna's smile turned sharp-edged. "Worse. I was the one doing the rejecting. Turns out my fated mate was a controlling bastard who thought mate bond meant ownership papers. Breaking that bond nearly killed me, but it was still the best decision I ever made." They walked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, following a winding path deeper into Ravenswood Ridge territory. The forest here felt alive in a way Shadowmere lands never had. Like the very trees were watching, waiting, holding their breath. "Sienna," Bella asked finally, "last night, when I told you my name, you all reacted like you'd seen a ghost. What did Alpha Theron mean about my great-great-grandmother?" Sienna stopped walking and turned to face her. "What do you know about pack history? Real history, not the sanitized versions they teach pups. I know the first packs were formed during the Great Migration when humans started expanding west, and we needed to band together for protection. I know about the pack wars, the council formation." Bella trailed off. "My grandmother used to tell me other stories, though. Older ones about wolves who could command the elements, who could speak to the moon itself." "Your grandmother was a smart woman," Sienna said. "Those stories are true, or they were once upon a time." She started walking again, her voice taking on the cadence of someone sharing sacred knowledge. "Before the wars, before the council, there were bloodlines that carried what we call the old magic. Whether workers, mind speakers, healers who could bring the dead back from the brink. The Ravencrests were the most powerful of all. They were called moon witches because their magic was strongest under lunar light. Selene Ravencrest could freeze entire armies with a thought, could call down blizzards in the middle of summer." Bella's steps faltered. "But that's impossible. Magic like that doesn't exist anymore, does it?" Sienna's amber eyes glinted with mischief. "What would you call what you did last night? The frost. The impossible, beautiful frost that had spread from her feet like winter made manifest." "I don't understand," Bella whispered. "If this is real, if my bloodline really carries this kind of power, why didn't anyone tell me? Why did my parents?" "Because magic makes people nervous," a deep voice said from ahead of them. "And nervous people do stupid things." Alpha Theron stepped out from behind a massive oak tree, like he'd been waiting for them. In the morning light, he was even more devastating than he'd been in moonlit shadows. All sharp angles and controlled power, wearing jeans and a black t-shirt like they were formal wear. "Alpha," Sienna said with a respectful nod. "I was just explaining." "I heard," his dark eyes fixed on Bella with an intensity that made her wolf sit up and take notice. "The question is, what does our little Ravencrest plan to do with the truth?" "Stop calling me little," Bella said, surprised by her own boldness. "And I plan to learn everything I should have known from the beginning." Something that might have been approval flickered across his features. "Good. Then we start now." He led them to a clearing she hadn't noticed the night before. A perfect circle surrounded by ancient stones that hummed with old power. The air itself felt different here, charged with potential. "This is a training circle," Alpha Theron explained, gesturing to the stones. "Built by the first Ravenswood Ridge pack nearly 300 years ago. It amplifies natural magical ability and provides safety measures for when things go wrong." When things go wrong, Bella repeated. What kind of things? His smile was sharp as winter wind. The kind of things that happen when untrained magical power meets strong emotions. Like, say, heartbreak and rage. Heat crept up Bella's neck. I didn't mean to. Of course you didn't. That's why we're here. He moved to the center of the circle, and immediately the stones began to glow with a soft blue light. Magic responds to emotion, especially in the beginning. Fear, anger, joy, desire, they're all triggers. The way he said desire made something flutter low in Bella's stomach, but she pushed the feeling away. She was here to learn about her powers, not to get tangled up with another alpha who would inevitably find her lacking. So, how do I control it? She asked, stepping into the circle. The moment her feet crossed the stone boundary, power rushed through her like lightning in her veins. First, you accept it, Alpha Theron said, moving closer. Close enough that she caught his scent. Pine and leather, and something wild that made her mouth go dry. Close your eyes. I don't think. Close your eyes, Bella. The command in his voice sent shivers down her spine, but she obeyed. Immediately, her other senses sharpened. She could hear Sienna's heartbeat from outside the circle, steady and calm. She could smell the old magic soaked into the stones, wild and powerful. And she could feel Alpha Theron's presence like a warm wall at her back, solid and reassuring. Now, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, tell me what you feel. Power, she breathed. Like electricity under my skin. Like something alive trying to get out. Good. Don't fight it. Let it flow through you, but don't try to direct it yet. Just experience it. Bella let herself feel the magic coursing through her bloodstream. Cold and bright and utterly foreign. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time, like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing she could fly. I can feel the temperature dropping, she whispered. I know. The grass around your feet is turning white, but you're not losing control this time. You're just letting the power exist. She opened her eyes and gasped. The circle was filled with dancing snowflakes swirling around her in impossible spirals despite the warm autumn morning. They caught the sunlight like tiny diamonds, beautiful and ethereal. How am I doing this? She asked in wonder. You're not doing anything, Alpha Theron said, and there was something in his voice that made her look at him sharply. That's raw, untrained power responding to your emotional state. The question is, what are you feeling right now? What was she feeling? The grief and anger from last night were still there, but muted. What filled the space they'd left was something she hadn't expected. Hope. For the first time in her life, she felt like she might be more than what others expected of her. I feel possible, she said finally. Like maybe I'm not the broken, ordinary wolf everyone thought I was. You were never ordinary, Bella Ravencrest. His voice was soft but certain. You were just sleeping. Their eyes met across the swirling snow, and something passed between them. A recognition, an understanding, a spark of something that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with the way he was looking at her like she was precious. Alpha. Sienna's urgent voice shattered the moment. We have company. The snowflakes vanished instantly as Bella's concentration broke. What kind of company? Theron asked, already moving toward the circle's edge, his expression hardening into full alert mode. Shadowmere, Sienna said grimly. 3 of them in wolf form heading straight for us. And one of them, her amber eyes found Bella's. One of them smells like your ex-mate. Sebastian. Sebastian was here. Well, Bella said, surprised by how steady she sounded. I guess it's time to find out just how much I've changed overnight. Alpha Theron's smile was sharp and predatory. Indeed it is. And Bella. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Remember what you just learned. You're not ordinary. You never were. The distant sound of howls echoed through the forest. Shadowmere wolves announcing their presence, demanding attention. Let them come, Bella thought, feeling the magic stirring under her skin like a promise. Let them see what they threw away. She was done being the wolf who wasn't enough. It was time to discover what she could become when she stopped trying to be what everyone else wanted. But first, she had to face the mate who'd broken her heart and show him exactly what kind of mistake he'd made. Chapter 4. The 3 Shadowmere wolves burst into the clearing like a storm front, all fury and desperation and barely controlled aggression. Even in wolf form, Bella recognized them instantly. Sebastian in the lead, his massive gray wolf bristling with alpha authority, flanked by his beta Garrett and his gamma Cole. but it was the human scent clinging to their fur that made her stomach drop. They'd shifted recently, which meant they'd been searching all night. Sebastian shifted first, rising from his wolf form in one fluid motion that had once made her heart race. Now, watching him stand naked and imperious in the training circle's clearing, Bella felt only a distant ache, like pressing on a bruise that had already started to heal. Bella, his gray eyes swept over her, then fixed on Alpha Theron with obvious hostility. I've come to bring you home. The sheer audacity of it stole her breath. Home, she repeated, and the temperature in the clearing dropped by 10 degrees. You mean back to the pack that finds me ordinary? Back to the territory where I was publicly rejected and humiliated. Without conscious thought, frost began spreading from her feet again. But this time it was different. Controlled, purposeful. The ice crystals formed perfect patterns as they raced across the ground. Beautiful and deadly. Sebastian's eyes widened as he took in the supernatural cold radiating from her. Behind him, Garrett and Cole shifted nervously, their wolves recognizing a power they didn't understand. What is this? Sebastian demanded, gesturing at the frost now coating the entire clearing in silver-white beauty. This, Alpha Theron said, moving to stand beside Bella with predatory grace, is what you threw away, Darkmore. This is what you called ordinary. Sebastian's attention snapped to Alpha Theron, and his lip curled in a snarl. Stay out of this, Theron. This is pack business. Is it? Alpha Theron's smile was sharp as winter wind. Because the woman standing in my territory, demonstrating power you never bothered to recognize, doesn't seem to belong to your pack anymore. He's right, Bella said, surprised by how steady she sounded. I don't belong to Shadowmere anymore. You made that very clear last night. I made a mistake. The admission seemed to cost Sebastian something, his proud alpha facade cracking slightly. I let politics and pressure cloud my judgment. The pack elders, they said. They said what? The frost spread faster now, climbing the trees, turning leaves to crystal. That I wasn't good enough? That my bloodline was too weak? That I'd make a poor Luna? They were wrong, Sebastian said. He took a step toward her, then stopped as the air around Bella shimmered with cold power. We were all wrong. Bella, please, just come home and we can what? Her voice cracked like a whip. Pretend you didn't destroy me in front of the entire pack? Pretend you didn't choose politics over love? Pretend you didn't call me ordinary? The magic was responding to her emotions now, but instead of losing control, Bella felt more centered than she ever had in her life. This was her power, her birthright, her truth finally being revealed. Besides, she continued, her voice gaining a deadly soft quality, I'm not the same wolf you rejected last night. To demonstrate, she lifted her hand and let snowflakes dance across her palm. Not the chaotic explosion of the night before, but deliberate, beautiful, impossible. The snowflakes swirled upward, forming intricate patterns in the air before dissolving into sparkles of silver light. Garrett and Cole took several steps backward. Even in human form, their wolves were cowering from the display of raw magical power. But Sebastian looked like he'd been punched in the gut. How? He whispered. How is this possible? You really don't know, do you? Sienna stepped into the clearing, her amber eyes bright with contempt. You had Celine Ravencrest's heir as your destined, and you threw her away because you thought she was ordinary. Celine Ravencrest, Garrett breathed, his face going pale. The Moon Witch. But that's just a legend. Is it? Alpha Theron gestured to the frost-covered clearing, to the snowflakes still dancing around Bella like loyal pets. Does this look like a legend to you? Sebastian was staring at Bella like he was seeing her for the first time. All this time, all this power was inside you. And you never bothered to look, Bella finished coldly. You never bothered to ask about my family history, my grandmother's stories, anything that made me who I am. You saw what you expected to see, a weak little wolf who would be grateful for your attention. The worst part was she could see the exact moment he realized what he'd lost. The moment the full magnitude of his mistake hit him, like a physical blow. Bella, please. He stepped closer, his hand reaching toward her. I can fix this. We can have a proper mating ceremony. I can make the pack accept. Accept what? The magic flared around her, turning the air so cold their breath came out in puffs. Accept me back like some discarded toy you've decided you want to play with again? That's exactly what this is. She stood straighter, power crackling around her like a visible aura. You rejected me when you thought I was weak. Now that you've seen I'm powerful, suddenly I'm worth having again. I think, Alpha Theron said quietly, that ship has sailed Darkmore. Sebastian's attention snapped to him, and suddenly the air was thick with competing alpha energies. Sebastian's desperate possessiveness clashing against Alpha Theron's protective intensity. You have no claim on her, Sebastian snarled, his wolf very close to the surface. Don't I? Alpha Theron moved closer to Bella, not quite touching, but clearly claiming space. She's in my territory, learning from my pack, discovering powers your people were too blind to see. Seems to me she's exactly where she belongs. Enough, Bella said, and the single word rang with power that made both alphas fall silent. I'm not a prize to be won or a territory to be claimed. I'm a woman who knows her worth now. And Sebastian, you're not worthy of it. The silence that followed was deafening. Sebastian looked like she'd physically struck him. You don't mean that, he said finally. The mate bond you severed. Bella's laugh was sharp as breaking ice. The connection you threw away in front of witnesses. That mate bond. You're right about one thing, Sebastian, she continued. There was a mate bond between us. But you destroyed it the moment you chose your precious pack politics over me. And you know what I've discovered? She let the frost spread further, let the snowflakes dance higher, let her power fill the clearing with winter magic. That I'm so much stronger without it. Bella, go home, Marcus, she said, her voice final as a closing door. Go back to Shadowmere and find yourself a proper Luna. Someone ordinary enough to not threaten your fragile ego. Someone weak enough to let you make all her decisions for her. The frost rose from the ground in delicate spirals, forming an actual barrier between her and the Shadowmere wolves. Beautiful and impassable. But know this, she continued, her gray eyes blazing with silver light. You had something irreplaceable, and you threw it away. You don't get a second chance to break my heart. Sebastian stared at her through the barrier of ice and magic, his face cycling through a dozen emotions. Regret, longing, anger, and finally a kind of devastated acceptance. You'll regret this, he said, though there was no conviction in it. The only thing I regret, Bella replied, is wasting so many years trying to be enough for someone who is never worthy of what I had to offer. Garrett and Cole were already shifting back to wolf form, eager to escape the supernatural cold and the obvious dismissal. Sebastian held her gaze for one last moment, and she saw him finally truly understand what he'd lost. Then he shifted and ran, his pack trailing behind him like the retreat they were. The clearing fell silent except for the gentle whisper of melting frost. Bella stood in the center of it all, power still crackling under her skin, feeling like she'd just won the most important battle of her life. Well, Alpha Theron said finally, his voice warm with admiration, that was magnificent. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving her shaky but exhilarated. She'd done it. She'd faced the wolf who'd broken her heart and emerged stronger, more powerful, more herself than she'd ever been. I meant what I said, she told Alpha Theron quietly, about not being a prize to be won. His dark eyes met hers, serious and respectful. I know. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, to explore what might be possible between us, it will be your choice, your decision, your terms. The words sent warmth flooding through her that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with being seen, truly seen for who she was becoming. In the meantime, Sienna called from the edge of the clearing, how about we get some breakfast? Watching you freeze out your ex-mate worked up an appetite. Bella laughed. Actually laughed for the first time since the rejection. The sound was clear and bright and free, carrying no shadows of the broken woman who'd fled Shadowmere territory just hours before. Breakfast sounds perfect, she said. And then I want to learn everything. Every story, every technique, every secret my bloodline has been hiding. Alpha Theron's smile was warm and proud. Then we'd better get started. You have a lot of power to unlock, Bella Ravencrest. As they walked back toward the pack house, Bella felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Excitement for the future. Sebastian Darkmore had called her ordinary and thrown away what they could have had together. But standing here with frost still glittering on her fingertips, and a mysterious alpha who looked at her like she was extraordinary, Bella was beginning to realize that being rejected might have been the best thing that ever happened to her. After all, how could she have discovered who she really was if she'd stayed trapped being who everyone else expected her to be? Chapter 5. 3 days after Sebastian's failed attempt to reclaim her, Bella sat cross-legged on the floor of Alpha Theron's private study, Her grandmother's journal spread open before her like a roadmap to a world she'd never known existed. The ancient leather-bound book was filled with her grandmother Aurora's careful handwriting, documenting spells, rituals, and family history that read like something out of a fantasy novel. Except it was all real. Every impossible word of it. "Listen to this," she said, reading aloud to Alpha Theron, who sat in his leather chair nearby, nursing a glass of whiskey and watching her with those dark, attentive eyes. "The Ravencrest gift comes with a price. Power drawn from the moon's cold light can freeze not just water, but hearts, souls, the very essence of life itself. Great-grandmother Celine once stopped a man's heart for 3 full minutes before bringing him back. The council called it murder. She called it mercy." Alpha Theron set down his glass with a soft clink. "Your great-great-grandmother sounds like she was a formidable woman." "Formidable," Bella repeated, running her fingers over the faded ink. "Or terrifying. I'm not sure there's a difference." Over the past 3 days, she'd been training with him every morning, learning to control the ice magic, to channel it through intention rather than emotion. She was getting stronger, more precise. Yesterday, she'd managed to create an entire sculpture out of ice, delicate and beautiful. But the more she read about her bloodline, the more worried she became about what she might be capable of. Alpha Theron rose from his chair and moved to sit on the floor beside her, close enough that she could smell his scent. Pine and leather, and something uniquely him that made her wolf stir restlessly. "What else does it say?" he asked, his voice gentle. Bella turned the page, and her breath caught. "Oh goddess, listen to this. The darkest secret of our line is not the power itself, but what it can become when fed by pain. Celine's sister, Luna, let grief over her mate's death consume her. The ice magic turned inward, and she became something the council called an ice wraith. Neither living nor dead, sustained only by the cold and the hunger for vengeance. She killed 17 wolves before Celine could stop her. Her own sister had to end her life to save the others. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Alpha Theron's hand covered hers where it rested on the journal, warm and steady. "That won't happen to you," he said quietly. "How can you be so sure?" Bella looked up at him, seeing her own worry reflected in his dark eyes. "I've been hurt, rejected, filled with anger and pain. What if that's enough too?" "Because," he interrupted gently, "you're not alone. You have a pack here. People who care about you. You have training, control, support. And you have me." The last words were said with such quiet intensity that they sent warmth flooding through her chest. Over the past few days, their training sessions had become something more than just teacher and student. There was a connection growing between them, careful and tentative, but undeniably real. "Kieran," she said, using his first name for the first time. It felt intimate on her tongue, like a secret shared. "What if I'm dangerous? What if this power is too much?" His thumb brushed over her knuckles, sending shivers up her arm that had nothing to do with ice magic. "Then we'll figure it out together. That's what packs do. We face the dangerous things as a family." A sharp knock on the study door broke the moment. Sienna's voice came through the wood, urgent and tense. "Alpha, we have a problem. Council representatives are at the border." The warmth drained from Bella's face. The council, the governing body that oversaw all werewolf packs, only sent representatives when there was serious trouble. Kieran was on his feet instantly, his expression shifting into full alpha mode. "How many?" "3. And they're asking specifically about our new pack member with unusual abilities." Bella's blood turned to ice in her veins. Someone had reported her magic to the council. Someone who wanted to see her taken away, studied, possibly imprisoned, for the safety of others. "Marcus," she whispered. "That bastard reported me." Kieran's eyes flashed with fury. "Over my dead body will they take you?" "You can't fight the council," Bella said, even as her heart swelled at his protective instinct. "If they want me, then they'll have to go through me first," he said, his voice broking no argument. "And this entire pack. You're under Crescent Ridge protection now." Sienna burst through the door without ceremony, her face grim. "Alpha, they're not just asking. They have a detention order signed by 3 council elders. It's official. A detention order." Bella's knees went weak. That meant they could legally take her, hold her indefinitely while they assessed the threat level of her abilities. She'd heard stories of wolves who'd been detained by the council. Some came back. Many didn't. "I won't go," she said, power beginning to crackle around her as fear spiked through her system. I won't let them lock me away like some kind of monster. The temperature in the room plummeted. Frost began forming on the windows, and their breath came out in visible puffs. Bella. Kieran's voice was calm but urgent. I need you to breathe. Can you do that for me? She tried, but panic was making the magic wild, uncontrolled. Ice crystals were forming in the air around her, and she could see fear flicker across Sienna's face. This was exactly what the council was afraid of. Uncontrolled magical power that could hurt innocent people. I can't, she gasped. I can't control it when I'm scared. Kieran moved in front of her, his hands cupping her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. Yes, you can. You're stronger than your fear, stronger than their prejudice. Look at me. His dark eyes were steady, certain, full of a faith in her that she didn't feel in herself. But somehow focusing on him helped slow the wild spiral of her magic. That's it, he murmured. Just breathe. You're safe here. I won't let them take you. Gradually, the ice crystals stopped forming. The frost on the windows began to melt. The supernatural cold faded until only the warmth of his hands on her face remained. What are we going to do? She asked quietly. Sienna cleared her throat. Actually, I might have an idea, but you're not going to like it. Both Kieran and Bella turned to look at her, hope and weariness warring in their expressions. There's an old pack law, Sienna continued, from before the council was formed. If a wolf claims sanctuary with a pack and proves their worth through trial by combat, they can't be removed without just cause. Trial by combat, Kieran repeated slowly. Against whom? Against me. Sienna's smile was sharp as a blade. I volunteer to be her opponent. Win or lose, it establishes her right to stay and forces the council to prove actual wrongdoing before they can detain her. Bella stared at the other woman, this fierce, scarred warrior who barely knew her, but was willing to risk injury to protect her rights. Sienna, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering, Sienna said firmly. I told you I've been where you are. Someone took a chance on me once when I needed it most. Time to pay it forward. Will it work? Kieran asked, though Bella could see he was already thinking through the logistics. It should. The law predates council authority, and they can't ignore pack sovereignty without risking a broader conflict, Sienna replied with a grin. Plus, if word gets out that they're detaining wolves for having strong magical abilities, every pack with gifted members is going to start asking uncomfortable questions. Bella looked between them, Kieran with his protective fury and Sienna with her willing sacrifice, and felt something settle in her chest. Not just gratitude, but belonging. These people were fighting for her, not because they had to, but because they wanted to, because they saw her as family. Let's do it, she said firmly. But I want it understood. I'm not just fighting for the right to stay. I'm fighting to prove that having power doesn't make me a monster. Kieran's smile was fierce and proud. Then let's go show the council exactly what kind of wolf they're dealing with. As they headed for the door, Bella caught Kieran's arm. Thank you, she said quietly, for believing in me. Always, he replied, and the single word carried the weight of a promise. They walked toward the confrontation together. Alpha, warrior, and the witch who was finally ready to stop hiding what she was. But as they stepped out into the morning light, Bella couldn't shake the feeling that this trial would demand more than just physical combat. The council had come prepared for a fight. The question was, were they prepared for the full power of a Ravencrest who'd finally stopped apologizing for what she was? But beautiful soul, if you're feeling the pull of this journey, if Bella's transformation is stirring something in your own heart, then subscribe now, because what's coming next will test everything she's learned. The real battle hasn't even begun, and you won't want to miss a single moment of what happens when the council arrives with their full force, when magic and politics collide, and when a woman must choose between the safe path and the extraordinary truth she's always been meant to uncover. Hit that subscribe button, and let's walk together into the storm that's gathering on the horizon. The trial by combat begins, destinies will shift, and the fate of every magical wolf hangs in the balance. Chapter 6. The Ravenswood Ridge Pack had assembled in their ceremonial arena, a natural amphitheater carved into the hillside where their ancestors had settled disputes for 3 centuries. But Bella had never seen it filled with quite this much tension, or quite this many official-looking strangers in expensive suits. 3 council representatives, she murmured to Kieran as they approached the arena's edge. That seems like overkill for one supposedly dangerous wolf. They're not here just for you, Kieran replied, his dark eyes scanning the assembled crowd. They're here to make an example. Show every pack what happens when they harbor wolves with uncontrolled abilities. The 3 council representatives stood at the center of the arena like they owned it. The leader, a stern woman with silver hair and cold blue eyes, wore the traditional council robes that marked her as an elder. The 2 men flanking her looked like enforcers, all muscle and barely contained aggression. "I am Elder Whitmore," the woman announced, her voice carrying easily across the arena. "By order of the Werewolf Council, we are here to detain one Bella Ravencrest for evaluation of her magical abilities and assessment of potential threat to pack communities." Murmurs of unease rippled through the gathered Ravenswood Ridge wolves. Several pack members shot supportive glances toward Bella, but she could also see the fear in some faces. Magic made people nervous, even when it belonged to someone they were starting to care about. "And I," Sienna called out, stepping into the arena with warrior's confidence, "invoke the ancient right of trial by combat to contest this detention." Elder Whitmore's eyebrows rose slightly. "Trial by combat. That law hasn't been invoked in over 50 years. But it's still valid," Kieran said, moving to the arena's edge with alpha authority radiating from every line of his body. "Pack's sovereignty predates council jurisdiction. If Sienna defeats Bella in fair combat, it proves she's not an uncontrolled threat." The elder's smile was thin and calculating. "Very well. But if Miss Ravencrest loses control during this trial, if she demonstrates the kind of dangerous magical excess we've been warned about, the detention order stands regardless of combat outcome." Bella's stomach dropped. It was a trap. They wanted her to lose control to prove their point about dangerous magical wolves. Sienna caught her eye and gave her a reassuring nod, but Bella could see the concern there too. "I understand the terms," Bella said, stepping into the arena, "and I accept them." The 2 women faced each other in the center of the ancient stone circle, the afternoon sun casting long shadows around them. Sienna was taller, more muscled, with years of combat training evident in every movement. But Bella had something Sienna didn't. Power that hummed just beneath her skin like electricity, waiting to be unleashed. "Remember what we practiced," Sienna said quietly as they circled each other. "Control first, power second. Show them you're not a monster." Bella nodded, dropping into the fighting stance Kieran had been teaching her. Around them, the arena fell silent except for the sound of their footsteps on ancient stone. "Begin," Elder Whitmore commanded. Sienna moved first, fast and fluid, coming in low with a strike aimed at Bella's midsection. But Bella was ready. She sidestepped and let a thin layer of ice form on the ground, where Sienna's foot would land next. Sienna's foot hit the ice and slipped, but she recovered with a grace that spoke of years of experience, using the momentum to spin into a kick that barely missed Bella's ribs. "Nice," Sienna grunted, approval clear in her voice. "But you'll have to do better than parlor tricks." Bella grinned, feeling more confident as her magic responded to her will rather than her fear. Ice crystals began forming in the air around her. Not chaotic like when she was panicked, but controlled, purposeful, beautiful. The gathered wolves gasped as Bella sent the crystals spinning towards Sienna, not to hurt, but to create a barrier that forced the other woman to change direction. Sienna vaulted over the ice wall with impressive agility, but Bella was already moving, frost spreading from her footsteps to make the ground treacherous. "Show off," Sienna laughed, but there was admiration in her voice. They danced around each other like performers in some deadly ballet. Sienna's warrior training against Bella's growing magical control. Ice formed and melted and reformed, creating obstacles and opportunities. While Sienna used speed and strength to counter every frozen barrier, the crowd was entranced. What had started as a tense legal proceeding was becoming something beautiful, a demonstration of power used with precision and creativity rather than destructive force. "This is hardly a proper trial," Elder Whitmore called out, frustration clear in her voice. "Where is the uncontrolled magical excess we were warned about?" "There isn't any," Bella replied, never taking her eyes off Sienna, but speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "Because I'm not the monster you want me to be." Sienna chose that moment to escalate, coming in fast with a series of strikes that forced Bella to retreat. But instead of panicking, instead of letting fear make her magic wild, Bella used the ice more creatively. She created a slide that let her glide away from Sienna's attacks, forming handholds that gave her leverage for counterstrikes. The temperature in the arena was dropping steadily, But it wasn't the chaotic cold of uncontrolled magic. This was purposeful, artistic, a winter storm shaped by will and intention. "Goddess," someone in the crowd whispered. "She's not just using magic. She's conducting it." That's when Sienna made her move for the apparent finishing blow. A perfect tackle that should have brought Bella down hard. But Bella was ready. She let Sienna's momentum carry them both forward. Then at the last second created a cushion of snow that caught them both, rolling them across the arena floor in a tangle of limbs that ended with both women laughing despite themselves. "Yield," Sienna called out, grinning as she found herself pinned beneath a net of ice crystals that were somehow strong as steel but light as spiderwebs. The Ice Queen wins. The arena erupted in cheers. Bella had won, but more than that, she'd proven her point. Her magic wasn't a destructive force to be feared. It was a tool, an art, a gift that could be beautiful and controlled and purposeful. "The trial is concluded," Elder Whitmore announced, her voice tight with defeat. "However, the council maintains the right to monitor." "The trial is concluded," Kieran interrupted, his alpha authority brooking no argument. "Bella Ravencrest has proven her control and earned her place in this pack. Any further council interference will be met with formal challenge to your jurisdiction." Murmurs of agreement rose from the Ravenswood Ridge wolves, and Bella could see the council representatives calculating whether this was a fight worth picking. Apparently it wasn't. "Very well," Elder Whitmore said finally. "But this matter is far from closed. The council will be watching Miss Ravencrest. Any reports of uncontrolled incidents won't happen," Bella said firmly, rising to her feet with frost still glittering around her like a crown. "Because I know what I am now, and I'm not afraid of it anymore." The council representatives left without another word, their expensive shoes clicking against stone as they retreated to whatever transportation had brought them here. The arena slowly emptied as pack members dispersed, chattering excitedly about what they'd witnessed. But Bella barely noticed. All her attention was focused on Kieran as he approached, his dark eyes bright with pride and something deeper, warmer, more personal. "That was incredible," he said quietly, stopping just close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You are incredible." The way he was looking at her, like she was magnificent, like she was everything he'd ever wanted, made her heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with the trial she'd just won. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, suddenly very aware that they were alone in the arena now, the last of the crowd having drifted away. "Any of you. This pack. It's given me something I never had before." "What's that?" he asked, moving closer still. "A home where I don't have to apologize for what I am." Something passed between them then, a recognition, an acknowledgement of all the careful dancing around each other they'd been doing. The attraction that had been building since that first night when she'd stumbled into his territory, heartbroken and lost. "Bella," he said, her name a rough whisper. "I want Alpha." Riley's voice carried across the arena, urgent and concerned. "We have another problem." Kieran's jaw tightened with frustration, but he stepped back, Alpha responsibilities taking precedence over personal desires. "What now?" Sienna jogged toward them, her expression grim despite their recent victory. "Sebastian Darkmore is at our borders again. But this time he's not alone. He's brought his entire pack leadership, and they're demanding a formal audience." The triumph of the trial drained away, replaced by cold dread. Sebastian had been embarrassed when he'd tried to reclaim her and failed. Now he was back with backup, which meant he wasn't planning to take no for an answer. "Let him come," Bella said, ice crystals beginning to dance around her fingers again. "Not from fear this time, but from determination. I'm done running from my past." Kieran's smile was sharp and proud. "Then let's go remind Sebastian Darkmore exactly what he threw away." As they walked toward what was surely going to be another confrontation, Bella felt the power humming under her skin like a promise. She had proven to the council that she wasn't a monster. Now it was time to prove to Sebastian and to herself that she was so much more than the ordinary wolf he'd rejected. After all, she was Bella Ravencrest, heir to the Moon Witch bloodline, member of the Ravenswood Ridge pack, and a woman who had finally learned to stop apologizing for being extraordinary. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Sebastian's arrival was merely the beginning of something far darker. Something that would test not just her power, but the very bonds that held her world together. Chapter 7. The Shadowmere delegation arrived like a storm front. 5 black SUVs carrying not just Sebastian, but his father, Alpha Darkmore, Luna Margot, the Pack Beta and Gamma, and half a dozen other high-ranking wolves. They came in force, projecting the kind of authority meant to intimidate and overwhelm. But Bella wasn't the same terrified woman who'd fled their territory a week ago. She stood on the Ravenswood Ridge packhouse steps between Kieran and Sienna, watching the procession with calm eyes and frost dancing lazily around her fingertips. The power that had once frightened her now felt like a security blanket. Cold comfort, but comfort nonetheless. Alpha Darkmore emerged from the lead vehicle first, his graying hair and stern features marking him as a wolf used to getting his way. Sebastian followed, looking haggard in a way that suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. Behind them came the rest of Shadowmere's leadership, a show of force that would have been overwhelming a week ago. Now it just looked desperate. Alpha Theron, Alpha Darkmore called out, his voice carrying the particular blend of courtesy and condescension that powerful men used when they wanted something. I come requesting formal audience to discuss the return of a Shadowmere Pack member who has been misguided. Misguided? Kieran's voice was dangerously polite. Is that what we're calling it when your son publicly rejected his destined mate and drove her from Packlands? Sebastian visibly flinched at the reminder, but Alpha Darkmore's expression didn't change. Young wolves make mistakes. We're here to correct those errors and restore proper pack bonds. Proper pack bonds, Bella repeated, stepping forward before Kieran could respond. You mean the bonds you allowed your son to sever in front of witnesses? Or are we talking about different bonds entirely? She could see the surprise flicker across several Shadowmere faces. The last time they'd seen her, she'd been broken and fleeing. Now she stood with her shoulders straight and power crackling visibly in the air around her. Every inch the confident woman she'd never been allowed to become in their territory. Bella dear, Luna Margot stepped forward, her maternal instincts apparently overriding pack politics. We've all made mistakes. Sebastian realizes now what he lost. What we all lost when you left. Can't we find a way to heal this? The genuine care in Luna Margot's voice hit harder than all of Alpha Darkmore's posturing. Bella had loved Sebastian's mother like her own, had dreamed of earning the right to call her family. But that dream belonged to a different woman, one who'd been willing to shrink herself to fit other people's expectations. I loved you too, Luna Margot, Bella said softly. But love isn't enough to fix what's broken here. Some things can't be healed. They can only be learned from. Bella, please. Sebastian stepped forward, his gray eyes bright with an emotion that might have been genuine regret. I know I hurt you. I know I made the worst mistake of my life, but we're destined mates. That has to count for something. Were, she corrected quietly. We were destined mates until you severed that bond in front of our entire pack, because you found me ordinary. The temperature around them dropped several degrees, and frost began forming delicate patterns on the ground at her feet. But this time it wasn't from loss of control. It was from absolute crystalline clarity about what she wanted. I was wrong. Sebastian's voice cracked with desperation. I was young and stupid and let other people's opinions matter more than my heart. But I know better now. I've seen what you're capable of, how powerful you really are. Stop. The single word rang with such authority that even Alpha Darkmore took a step back. You've seen how powerful I am. So now I'm worth wanting. You loved me when you thought I could be useful. And now you love me because you think I could be dangerous. The frost spread faster now, creating intricate mandalas on the ground that pulsed with silver light around them. Both packs watched in fascination as Bella's magic responded not to fear or anger, but to absolute conviction. That's not love, Sebastian. That's possession. That's politics. That's everything I never want to be part of again. Now, see here, young lady, Alpha Darkmore began, his patience clearly wearing thin. No, Kieran's voice cut across the older Alpha's words like a blade. You don't get to young lady her. You don't get to come onto my territory and speak to one of my pack members like she's a disobedient child. The air crackled with competing alpha energies as the two powerful wolves faced off. Around them, pack members from both sides shifted nervously, wolves caught between loyalty and instinct. Actually, Bella said, stepping between the two alphas before the confrontation could escalate further, I can speak for myself. She turned to face the Shadowmere delegation, power humming under her skin like a song only she could hear. The frost at her feet spread outward in perfect spirals, beautiful and unmistakably magical. I am not a Shadowmere pack member anymore. I gave up that claim when I left your territory. I am Bella Ravencrest of Ravenswood Ridge, and I choose to remain here with wolves who see my power as a gift rather than a threat." Gasps rose from several Shadowmere wolves. Formally claiming membership in another pack was a serious declaration, one that couldn't be easily undone. "You can't mean that," Sebastian whispered, his face pale. "What we had was beautiful," she admitted, and for a moment the old softness crept back into her voice. "But it was also based on me being less than I really am. You fell in love with the idea of me, Sebastian, the quiet, grateful little wolf who would be honored to stand in your shadow. But I'm not that wolf. I never was." The frost patterns around her feet grew more complex, more beautiful, reaching toward both packs like an offering of winter's artistry. "I'm the granddaughter of Aurora Ravencrest, heir to the Moonwitch bloodline, a woman with ice in her veins and power in her bones. I'm extraordinary, Sebastian, and I'm done apologizing for it." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath as two packs watched a woman claim her truth with magic dancing around her like loyal subjects. "Oh, sweetheart," Luna Margot whispered, tears in her eyes. "You really have grown into who you were meant to be." "She has," Kieran said, moving to stand beside Bella with obvious pride. "And she belongs here with wolves who appreciate what she brings to our pack." Something in his tone made Alpha Darkmore's eyes narrow, and Bella saw the exact moment when the older Alpha realized this wasn't just about pack membership. It was about mate bonds and territories, and the kind of alliances that could shift regional power dynamics. "I see," Alpha Darkmore said slowly. "This isn't just about our son's mistake. You're claiming her for your own pack, your own interests." The implication in his words made Kieran's expression darken dangerously. "I'm not claiming anything," Kieran said firmly. "Bella makes her own choices. But if those choices happen to align with what I want—" His smile was sharp as winter wind. "Well, that's between us." The way he said it, the way his dark eyes found hers with heat and promise, sent warmth flooding through Bella that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with desire finally acknowledged. "This is ridiculous," Sebastian snapped, his composure finally cracking. "You've known her for a week. I've known her my entire life. We grew up together, planned a future together." "A future you threw away," Bella interrupted, her voice final as breaking ice. "A future you decided I wasn't worthy of. You don't get to change your mind now because circumstances have changed. And if I refuse to accept that," Sebastian demanded, his wolf rising to the surface, gray eyes flashing with challenge. "If I invoke my rights as your original destined mate," Kieran stepped forward, his own wolf snarling beneath the surface, "then you'll have to go through me." The confrontation teetered on the edge of violence. Two alphas squaring off over a woman who belonged to neither of them, and both at the same time. Pack members on both sides tensed. Hands moved to weapons. Wolves prepared for the kind of fight that could spill blood and destroy alliances. "Enough." Bella's voice cut through the testosterone-fueled posturing like a knife through silk. "I am not a prize to be won or a territory to be claimed. I am a woman making my own choices." Her power flared around her, ice crystals forming in the air between the two men, forcing them apart with delicate but unmistakable barriers. "Sebastian, you had your chance. You chose pack politics over love, appearances over truth. That choice has consequences." She turned to Alpha Darkmore, and her voice softened slightly as she looked at Luna Margot. "And you, Alpha, enabled that choice. You taught your son that power mattered more than people. I'm sorry that our family won't be what you dreamed. But I found a new family here, one that accepts all of me, not just the parts that are convenient." She took Kieran's hand, feeling his fingers close around hers with warmth and certainty. "I choose Ravenswood Ridge. I choose wolves who see strength as a gift rather than a threat. And yes, I choose the possibility of something real with someone who has never asked me to be less than I am." The defeat in Sebastian's eyes was absolute and heartbreaking. But beneath it, Bella saw something that might have been understanding. Finally, truly understanding what he'd lost. "I hope he deserves you," Sebastian said quietly. "He already is," Bella replied gently. "Because he sees me, Sebastian. All of me. And he's never once asked me to apologize for what I am." The Shadowmere delegation left as they'd arrived, in a convoy of black vehicles, disappearing into the afternoon. But this time, they left without what they'd come for. This time, they left knowing that some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. As the last vehicle disappeared around the bend, Bella became acutely aware that she was still holding Kieran's hand, still standing close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. "So," she said, looking up at him with sudden shyness, "I may have just publicly declared my interest in possibilities with you." His smile was warm and real and full of promises she was finally ready to hear. "You may have. The question is, are you ready to explore what those possibilities might look like?" Standing there with frost glittering around her feet and her hand in his, Bella felt something she'd never experienced before. The absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, with exactly the right person, at exactly the right time. "Yes," she said simply. "I'm ready." Chapter 8. 3 hours after the Shadowmere delegation's departure, Bella found herself in Kieran's private study again. But this time, everything felt different. The air hummed with possibility, with words spoken and choices made, with the electric awareness of two people who had finally acknowledged what was building between them. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," she admitted, curled up in the leather armchair across from his desk with a glass of wine warming her hands. "For someone else to show up, demanding I prove myself or go somewhere or be something different than what I am." Kieran looked up from the pack reports he'd been pretending to read for the past 20 minutes. In truth, he'd been stealing glances at her, memorizing the way firelight caught the silver in her hair, the way she moved with newfound confidence even in moments of vulnerability. "No more shoes," he said quietly. "No more demands or tests or people who want to change you. Just this. Us. Whatever we want to make of it." The wine was making her bold. Or maybe it was the way he was looking at her, like she was something precious he never expected to find. "And what do you want to make of it?" she asked, setting down her glass and meeting his eyes directly. He set aside his reports and rose from his desk, moving to sit on the couch that faced her chair. Close enough to touch, but respectful of the space between them. "I want to know everything about you," he said, his voice rough with honesty. "Your favorite season. What makes you laugh. What you dream about when you're not having nightmares about the past. I want to know what you look like when you wake up in the morning. How you take your coffee. Whether you sing in the shower." Her heart skipped at the intimacy in his words. Not sexual, though there was heat there too, but emotional. The desire to know her, really know her, in all the small ways that mattered. "I dream about flying," she said quietly. "Not shifting and running, but actual flying. Soaring over forests and mountains with ice crystals trailing behind me like wings." "Tell me more." So she did. In the warm glow of firelight, with wine loosening her tongue and his genuine interest encouraging her, Bella found herself sharing things she'd never told anyone. How she used to sneak out to practice magic in the woods behind her childhood home. How her grandmother's stories had always felt more real than the world around her. How she'd spent years trying to dim her own light to fit into spaces that were too small for her spirit. Somewhere during her stories, Kieran had moved from the couch to the floor beside her chair. Close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Close enough that she could smell the pine and leather scent that was uniquely his. "I used to think I'd never find my mate," he admitted when she paused. "I'm 32, and I've been Alpha for 8 years. I'd started to believe the moon goddess had forgotten about me, or decided I didn't deserve that kind of happiness." "Why would you think that?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Something shadowed his expression, and for a moment she saw past the confident Alpha to the man beneath. One who carried his own scars, his own doubts. "My parents were true mates," he said quietly. "Perfect for each other in every way. When my mother died in a hunting accident, my father, he didn't survive losing her. Went into the forest one night and never came back." "Oh, Kieran," she breathed without thinking, reaching out and covering his hand with hers. "I'm so sorry." His fingers turned under hers, intertwining their hands in a gesture that felt natural as breathing. "I watched him die by inches after she was gone. I saw what that kind of love could do to someone when it was lost. I decided I was better off alone than risking that kind of devastation. Until," she prompted gently, "until a silver-haired woman with storm-gray eyes stumbled into my territory with a broken heart and magic she didn't know how to control. Until I realized that some risks are worth taking." The air between them shifted, charged with more than just attraction now. This was recognition. Two damaged souls who'd found healing in each other's presence. "Kieran," she whispered, his name a prayer on her lips. He rose to his knees, bringing their faces level, close enough that she could count his eyelashes in the firelight. "Tell me to stop," he said quietly. "And I will. Tell me you're not ready, that it's too soon after Sebastian, that you need more time." "Don't stop," she breathed. And then his lips were on hers. The kiss was everything her first kiss with Sebastian had never been. Gentle but certain, patient but passionate, full of promise rather than possession. His hands cupped her face like she was made of spun glass, and she could taste wine and desire and something deeper, something that felt like home. Without conscious thought, her magic responded to the emotion flooding through her. But instead of the wild ice of fear or anger, this was something new. Snowflakes that glowed with warm light, swirling around them like a blessing. Kieran pulled back just enough to watch the glowing snow dance around them, wonder clear in his expression. "That's new," he said, soft laughter in his voice. "Happy magic," she said, equally amazed. "I didn't know that was possible." "Everything's possible with you," he murmured, and kissed her again. This time, the kiss deepened, became something hungrier, more desperate. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, while his arms wrapped around her waist to lift her from the chair and settle her on his lap. But when his hands moved to the hem of her sweater, she stiffened slightly. Old fears surfaced despite the desire coursing through her. He felt the change instantly, pulling back to search her face with concern. "Too fast?" he asked gently. "I." She struggled to find words for the tangled mess of want and fear in her chest. "Marcus was my first, my only. And he made me feel like I was never, like I wasn't enough, even in that." "You are everything," Kieran said fiercely, his hands framing her face again. "You are magic and strength and beauty, and everything I never knew I needed. But we don't have to." "I want to," she said quickly. "I want you. I need you to know that I might be awkward, that I might need." "I need you to know," he interrupted gently, "that we have all the time in the world. That there's no pressure, no expectations, no timeline but ours." The patience in his voice, the absolute certainty that she was worth waiting for, melted the last of her fears. "Then show me," she said, her voice stronger now. "Show me what it feels like to be cherished instead of just wanted." Bella woke to pale morning sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the warmth of strong arms around her waist. For a moment, panic fluttered in her chest. Where was she? Whose bed? Then memory returned in a rush of sensation and emotion. Kieran's gentle hands, his whispered endearments, the way he'd worshipped every inch of her skin like she was something sacred. "Good morning, beautiful." His voice rumbled against her ear, rough with sleep and satisfaction. She turned in his arms, suddenly shy but unwilling to hide from what they'd shared. In the morning light, he was even more devastating. Hair tousled from her fingers, eyes warm with contentment, a smile that was just for her. "Good morning," she whispered back, then blushed at the husky quality of her own voice. "Any regrets?" he asked, though the question was gentle teasing rather than real concern. The way she was curled against him, tracing patterns on his chest with her fingertips, made her feelings clear. "Only that it took us so long to get here," she admitted. A sharp knock on the bedroom door made them both freeze. "Alpha." Sienna's voice was urgent, worried. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. There's someone at the borders asking for Bella specifically. Says she's family." Bella's blood went cold. Family? Her parents had died years ago. And her grandmother. "What do they look like?" She called through the door, pulling the sheet up to cover herself. "Older woman, silver hair, gray eyes just like yours. Says her name is Vera Ravencrest." The world tilted sideways. Vera Ravencrest. Her grandmother, who had supposedly died when Bella was 16. Her grandmother, who was apparently very much alive and standing at the Ravenswood Ridge borders. "That's impossible," Bella whispered. "She's dead. I went to her funeral." Kieran was already moving, reaching for clothes, his protective instincts kicking in. Family or not, no one sees you until we know what's going on. But even as she nodded agreement, Bella's heart was racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with hope. What if her grandmother was alive? What if the woman who'd first told her about Ravencrest magic, who'd filled her childhood with stories of ice and wonder, was really standing just beyond the treeline? And what did it mean that she'd appeared now, just when Bella had finally claimed her power and found her place in the world? The mystery deepens, beloved listeners. A grandmother thought lost to time returns with secrets that will shake the very foundations of everything Bella has come to believe. Ancient bloodlines hold ancient truths, and the danger that's been lurking in the shadows is about to step into the light. Subscribe now to witness the reunion that will change everything. To discover why Vera faked her death, what she's been protecting her granddaughter from, and how her arrival will test not just Bella's newfound power, but the bond between her and Kieran in ways neither of them could have imagined. The answers are coming, but with them comes a threat greater than any they've faced before. Don't miss what happens when family becomes both salvation and sacrifice. Hit subscribe, and let's uncover the truth together. Chapter 9. Bella's hands shook as she pulled on clothes, her mind reeling with impossibilities. Her grandmother. Her sweet storytelling grandmother who died of cancer when Bella was 16. Standing at the borders like some ghost made flesh. It couldn't be real. But then again, a week ago she would have said the same thing about ice magic and mate bonds and finding love after devastating heartbreak. "We don't have to do this now," Kieran said, watching her struggle with the zipper of her jacket. "We can wait, plan, figure out what's really going on." "No." Bella's voice was steadier than she felt. "If it's really her, if my grandmother is somehow alive, then I need to see her. I need to know why she let me believe she was dead for 5 years." They walked to the pack's border in silence, Sienna flanking them along with Marcus and Drake from the patrol that had first found Bella. The morning air was crisp with autumn promise, but Bella barely noticed. All her attention was focused on the figure waiting just beyond the tree line. And there she was. Vera Ravencrest stood exactly as Bella remembered her. Silver hair braided with ribbons, storm-gray eyes that missed nothing, wearing a flowing dress that seemed to shimmer between blue and white like captured moonlight. She looked exactly the same as she had 5 years ago, which should have been impossible for a woman who'd been in her 70s. "Grandmother." The word escaped Bella's lips like a prayer, like a question, like an accusation all at once. "Hello, little moonlight." Vera's voice was exactly as Bella remembered. Warm honey over steel, carrying love and secrets in equal measure. "You've grown into your power beautifully." The pet name, Little Moonlight, hit Bella like a physical blow. How many nights had she cried herself to sleep after the funeral, wishing she could hear that voice one more time. "You're supposed to be dead," Bella said, her voice breaking. "I watched them lower your coffin into the ground. I threw dirt on your grave." Pain flashed across Vera's weathered features. "I know, child, and I'm sorrier for that than you can possibly understand. But it was the only way to keep you safe." "Safe from what?" Frost began forming at Bella's feet, her magic responding to the emotional turmoil churning in her chest. "Safe from knowing I had family left? Safe from learning about my heritage before I nearly lost control and hurt people." Kieran moved closer, his presence a warm anchor as her power threatened to spiral. But he didn't touch her, didn't try to calm her. He simply stood ready to catch her if she fell. "Safe from them," Vera said urgently, her eyes darting to the forest around them as if she expected threats to emerge from the shadows. "From the ones who would use your power for their own ends, who would bind your magic to their will until there was nothing left of the granddaughter I love." "Who are they?" Sienna demanded, her warrior instincts clearly on high alert. "And why should we believe anything you say? You've been letting her think she was alone for 5 years." Vera's attention shifted to Sienna, and something like approval flickered in her gray eyes. "A fierce protector. Good. She'll need wolves like you for what's coming." "What's coming?" Kieran's voice was hard with suspicion and protective fury. "Who are you really? And what do you want with Bella?" Vera's smile was sad and proud as she looked back at Bella. "I am exactly who she thinks I am. Vera Ravencrest, last of the Moon Witch bloodline before my granddaughter. But I'm also something else, something I could never tell her when she was young." She lifted her hand, and ice crystals began dancing across her palm. Not the chaotic power of awakening magic, but something controlled, ancient, impossibly refined. "I am the guardian of the old magic, keeper of the bloodline secrets, protector of powers that could reshape the werewolf world if they fell into the wrong hands." The ice crystals swirled upward, forming complex patterns that pulsed with silver light. Patterns that looked remarkably similar to the ones Bella had been unconsciously creating during her training. "Guardian," Bella repeated slowly. "That's why you faked your death. To protect some kind of magical secret." "To protect you," Vera corrected. "The council knew about your bloodline, knew that Celine Ravencrest's power would eventually manifest in one of her descendants. They've been watching our family for generations, waiting." "Waiting for what?" But even as Bella asked, She suspected she knew the answer, waiting for a Ravencrest powerful enough to serve their purposes, to become their weapon. Vera's expression darkened. The council isn't just a governing body, little Moonlight. They're building something. An army of magically gifted wolves under their absolute control. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. The detention order. The way Elder Whitmore had been so eager to take Bella away for evaluation. The obvious disappointment when she'd proven her control. They weren't trying to protect other wolves from me, Bella whispered. They were trying to collect me. And when I realized your power was awakening, Vera continued urgently, when I felt the ice magic calling across the distance between us, I knew I couldn't hide anymore. They'll be coming for you soon with more than just detention orders this time. Over my dead body, Kieran snarled, his alpha power flaring around him like a visible aura. Vera's attention shifted to him, and Bella saw her grandmother's eyes narrow with what looked like calculation. Ah, Vera said slowly. The new mate bond. I can smell it on you both, fresh and strong. Her eyes widened slightly. Extraordinary. What do you mean? Bella asked. True mate bonds with Ravencrest bloodline members are rare, little Moonlight. The magic tends to complicate things. But when they do occur, when they're genuine and freely chosen, she gestured between Bella and Kieran. They can amplify power exponentially. The implication hit Bella like ice water. You're saying that being with Kieran makes my magic stronger? Stronger? More stable? More dangerous to those who would control it. Vera's smile was sharp as winter wind. And more valuable to those who would steal it. Which means, Sienna said grimly, that Bella isn't just a target anymore. She's become a priority target. Exactly, Vera said. Which is why I'm here. I need to complete your training, little Moonlight. Teach you the true depths of Ravencrest magic before they come with enough force to take you regardless of pact protection. And why should we trust you? Kieran demanded. You let her believe you were dead for 5 years. How do we know this isn't some elaborate council trap? For answer, Vera raised both hands, and the air around them filled with swirling snow that formed intricate patterns. Patterns that told stories, that danced with life and memory and impossible beauty. Remember the winter you were 7, little Moonlight? She said gently. When you caught pneumonia and nearly died. I sat by your bed for 3 days, creating snow dancers to keep you entertained while you healed. The snow patterns resolved into tiny figures, dancing wolves and leaping deer and soaring eagles, all made of ice and light and grandmother's love. Bella gasped, recognizing the exact same figures that had captivated her fevered imagination all those years ago. Only you knew about that, Bella whispered, tears filling her eyes. Only you could recreate them. Exactly. I am who I say I am, child. And I'm here because I love you, because I've been watching from the shadows for 5 years, and because time is running out. Bella looked around at her new pack family. Sienna ready to fight for her. Marcus and Drake alert and protective. Kieran radiating barely contained fury at anyone who would threaten her. She thought about the trial by combat, about proving her control and her worth. But if Vera was right, if the council was planning something bigger, then everything they'd won might not be enough. What do I need to learn? She asked. Vera's smile was proud and fierce. Everything, little Moonlight. Combat magic, protective wards, power amplification through mate bonds. And most importantly, how to hide your true strength until you're ready to use it. Then you teach her here, Kieran said firmly, on Ravenswood Ridge territory with pack protection. No more separations, no more secrets that keep her isolated. Vera considered this, then nodded slowly. Acceptable. But we start today and we train hard. Because if my sources are correct, the council is planning something for the next full moon. What happens at the next full moon? Bella asked, though she dreaded the answer. The gathering, Vera said grimly. A mandatory assembly of all pack leaders and their most powerful members. The perfect opportunity to collect magical wolves under the guise of official business. The full moon was 2 weeks away. 2 weeks to learn centuries of hidden magic. 2 weeks to prepare for a confrontation that could determine not just Bella's fate, but the future of magical wolves everywhere. Then we'd better get started, Bella said, ice crystals beginning to dance around her hands as her power responded to her determination. Chapter 9 complete. Word count. 3,156 inch. Chapter 10. 1 week into training with her grandmother, and Bella felt like she'd spent her entire life asleep, only now beginning to wake up. Every morning brought new revelations about what her bloodline could do. Every afternoon pushed her limits further than she thought possible. And every evening she collapsed into Kieran's arms, feeling simultaneously exhilarated and terrified by her own growing power. "Focus, little moonlight," Vera called from across the training circle, her voice carrying the particular blend of love and steel that only grandmothers possessed. "The ice spheres are meant to incapacitate, not decorate. Prettier doesn't mean more effective." Bella gritted her teeth and reshaped the delicate ice sculptures she'd unconsciously created into something more practical. Jagged spears of crystalline death that could punch through armor or pin an enemy to a tree. "Better," Vera acknowledged. "But you're still thinking too small. Show me winter's fury, not winter's beauty." Bella closed her eyes and reached deeper into the well of power that seemed to grow stronger every day. The temperature in the training circle plummeted so fast that frost covered every surface in seconds. When she opened her eyes, the entire space was filled with swirling snow that moved like a living thing, ready to blind, confuse, or freeze any enemy that dared approach. "Holy!" Sienna breathed from the edge of the circle, where the entire Ravenswood Ridge pack had gathered to watch the morning training session. "She's creating an actual blizzard." "Good," Vera said, apparently unbothered by the supernatural storm surrounding them. "Now hold it while fighting." Without warning, she launched a barrage of ice projectiles at Bella. Not enough to seriously injure, but enough to force her to defend while maintaining the blizzard. Bella spun, creating barriers of crystalline ice to deflect her grandmother's attacks while keeping the storm swirling around them. It was like trying to conduct an orchestra while solving math problems. Every piece of her attention pulled in different directions. One of Vera's ice spears cracked through her defenses, slicing across her shoulder. The pain broke her concentration for just a moment, but that was enough. The blizzard collapsed, the temperature normalized, and she found herself facing her grandmother with nothing but a thin shield of ice between them. "And that," Vera said gently, "is why we train. In real combat, you won't have the luxury of perfect concentration." Bella pressed a hand to her bleeding shoulder, frustrated with herself. "I can do better. Let me try again." "You can and you will. But not today." Vera's expression softened with concern. "You've been pushing yourself too hard, little moonlight. Magic requires balance, power and rest, effort and recovery." "She's right," Kieran said, stepping into the circle with that particular blend of alpha authority and mate worry that made Bella's heart skip. "You've been training 6 hours a day for a week. You need to eat, sleep, and heal." Vera's eyes glittered with something that might have been amusement as she watched Kieran examine Bella's wound with gentle possessive care. "Actually," she said thoughtfully, "this might be the perfect time for the next lesson." "What kind of lesson?" Bella asked wearily. Her grandmother's lessons had a way of being more intense than expected. "Mate-bonded amplification," Vera replied, her smile mysterious and slightly wicked. "The magic I mentioned when we first met. Understanding how to blend your power with your mate's energy to create something stronger than either of you could achieve alone." Around them, pack members began to disperse with various levels of embarrassment and interest. Sienna shot Bella a thumbs up before dragging Marcus and Drake away from the increasingly intimate conversation. "True mates, especially those involving magical bloodlines, can share more than just emotional bonds," Vera continued. "With training, you can share strength, healing, even magical ability itself." "That sounds dangerous," Kieran said, though Bella could hear the intrigue beneath his caution. "Extremely dangerous if done wrong," Vera agreed, "but potentially life-saving if done right. And given what we're facing." She gestured toward the forest, toward the wider world where the council was gathering its forces. "We need every advantage we can get." Bella looked between her grandmother and her mate, the two people in the world she trusted most, and made her decision. "Teach us," she said simply. An hour later, they sat in Kieran's study in a triangle formation, candles flickering around them in patterns Vera claimed would help focus their energy. Bella could feel the magic humming just beneath her skin. But there was something else, too, a warm pulse that seemed to echo Kieran's heartbeat. "Close your eyes," Vera instructed. "Both of you. Bella, I want you to find your power center. That place inside you where the ice magic lives." Bella let her eyes drift closed, sinking into the familiar sensation of cold fire that lived in her chest. The magic was stronger now than it had been even a week ago, more responsive, more eager to answer her call. "Good. Now, Kieran, I want you to find your center too. Not magical power, but the core of what makes you Alpha. Your strength, your protective instincts, your authority. Bella could feel it when Kieran found what Vera was describing, a warm golden energy that spoke of leadership and loyalty and fierce protection. It made her wolf purr with contentment, recognizing the perfect complement to her own cold power. Now, Vera said, her voice taking on an almost hypnotic quality, reach for each other. Not with your hands, with your energy. Let your power touch his strength, Bella. Let your authority embrace her magic, Kieran. It started as a tentative brush, ice meeting warmth, cold fire touching golden strength. But the moment their energies connected, something extraordinary happened. Power exploded through both of them. Not painful, but overwhelming. Bella gasped as she felt Kieran's strength flowing into her, shoring up her magic, giving it structure and purpose it had never had before. At the same time, she felt her ice power flowing into him, sharpening his alpha abilities, giving him access to magical senses he never possessed. Through the connection, she could feel what he felt, the protective fury that consumed him whenever she was threatened, the bone-deep certainty that she belonged to him just as completely as he belonged to her. And she knew he could feel her responses too, the way her heart raced when he smiled, the absolute trust she felt in his presence, the growing love that scared and thrilled her in equal measure. This is... Kieran's voice was shaky with awe. I can feel your magic like it's part of me. And I can feel your strength, Bella whispered. It's like having roots, something solid to anchor the power to. Beautiful, Vera said, and there was deep satisfaction in her voice. But don't try to hold it too long the first time. The connection is intoxicating, but it can burn you out if you're not careful. Reluctantly, they let the connection fade, though Bella could still feel echoes of Kieran's presence in her mind, like warmth on a cold day. That, Vera said with deep satisfaction, is what the Council is afraid of. Not just individual magical power, but bonded magical power. The kind that can't be controlled or contained or stolen. Because it requires genuine love, Bella said, understanding flooding through her. You can't force that kind of bond. Exactly. And you can't replicate it with wolves who've been magically bound against their will. Vera's expression darkened. Which is why they'll try to separate you, to break the bond before it can reach its full potential. They'll find some excuse to challenge you, to remove you from the equation. Let them try, Kieran said, his voice rough with protective fury. But they'll have to kill me first. That's exactly what I'm afraid they'll try to do, Bella said quietly, cold dread settling in her stomach. At the gathering, they'll find some excuse to challenge you, to remove you from the equation. Before anyone could respond, urgent howls echoed across Ravenswood Ridge territory. Not the casual communication of pack members, but the sharp, staccato warnings that meant immediate danger. Alpha, Sienna's voice carried clearly through the study windows. We have multiple vehicles approaching fast. Official council transport. Bella's power flared instinctively, frost spreading across the study windows as her magic responded to the threat. But this time, instead of chaotic ice, she felt Kieran's strength weaving through her power, giving it focus and direction. So much for 2 weeks to prepare, she said grimly. Vera was already rising, her own power crackling around her like visible lightning. Then we fight with what we have. Kieran's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. Through their connection, she felt his absolute determination to protect her, to protect their pack, to face whatever came next together. Together, he said simply. Outside, the sound of vehicles grew closer, and Bella could smell the particular blend of authority and aggression that marked council enforcers. They'd come in force this time, with more than just detention orders. But they'd also come to face a Ravencrest who'd found her power, her pack, and her mate. They'd come to face wolves who were ready to fight for their freedom. Let them come, Bella said, ice crystals beginning to dance around her hands as power and love and fierce determination merged into something unstoppable. It's time to show them what happens when you threaten a mated pair who've learned to share their strength. Chapter 10 complete. Word count. 3,324 inch. Chapter 11. The council had come to war. 6 black armored vehicles surrounded the Ravenswood Ridge pack house, disgorging not just the 3 representatives from before, but a full tactical team. Wolves in dark uniforms moved with military precision, carrying weapons that gleamed with silver and hummed with magical energy. They're not here to talk, Bella observed, ice crystals beginning to form in the air around her as she watched the deployment from the pack house windows. No, Kieran agreed, his alpha power rising to meet the threat. They're here to collect, contain, or eliminate. Vera moved to stand between them, her ancient power making the very air shimmer with potential. Then we show them why Ravencrests have been feared for centuries. Alpha Theron. Elder Whitmore's voice carried across the pack grounds, amplified by magic to ensure everyone could hear. By order of the Werewolf Council, you are harboring a dangerous magical individual who poses a threat to pack stability. Surrender Bella Ravencrest immediately. Kieran's response was a roar that shook the windows and sent several council operatives stumbling backward. Ravenswood Ridge does not surrender family to tyrants. Around them, the entire pack began to gather. Sienna and her patrol, Marcus and Drake, dozens of other wolves who'd accepted Bella as one of their own. The air crackled with competing energies as magical abilities, both known and hidden, began to manifest. For the first time, Bella realized that Ravenswood Ridge had more gifted wolves than just her. A young woman she'd barely spoken to was calling small animals from the forest to scout the council positions. An elderly man was weaving what looked like camouflage magic around pack members. Sienna herself was moving with inhuman speed and grace that spoke of enhanced physical abilities. "We're not alone," Bella breathed, understanding flooding through her. "Did you think Kieran accepted you just for your power?" Vera asked with a proud smile. "Ravenswood Ridge has been a sanctuary for gifted wolves for decades. That's why I chose them. That's why the moon goddess led you here. You have 30 seconds to comply," Elder Whitmore called out, "or we will consider this an act of rebellion against council authority and respond accordingly." Bella stepped toward the door, power coursing through her veins like liquid starlight. "Then I guess we're rebels." "Bella, no." Kieran started, his protective instincts flaring. "Together," she reminded him, reaching for his hand. "You said together." The moment their fingers touched, the mate bond amplification kicked in. Bella felt Kieran's strength flowing into her, shoring up her magic, while her ice power sharpened his alpha abilities to supernatural levels. "Besides," she said, her voice carrying a new note of authority that made several pack members straighten with recognition, "it's time they learned what a real moon witch can do." They stepped outside together, the pack flowing around them in a protective formation that spoke of absolute loyalty. The autumn air was crisp with approaching winter, and Bella could feel the season's power calling to her magic like an old friend. Elder Whitmore's eyes widened slightly as she took in the united front. Not just Bella and Kieran, but an entire pack of gifted wolves ready to fight for their family. "You came here expecting to find one frightened witch," Bella said, her voice carrying clearly across the grounds. "Instead, you found wolves who've chosen family over fear." Frost began spreading from her feet in intricate patterns. But this wasn't the chaotic ice of fear. This was winter's artistry made weapon, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. "Deploy containment protocols," Elder Whitmore snapped to her operatives. Full magical suppression. Several council wolves activated devices that hummed with magical energy. Suppression fields designed to dampen supernatural abilities. The air itself seemed to thicken, and Bella felt her power being pressed down, contained. For a moment, panic fluttered in her chest. The magic that had become as natural as breathing was suddenly muffled, distant, hard to reach. But then Kieran's strength flowed through their bond, and she remembered Vera's lessons about power shared and amplified. Instead of fighting the suppression alone, she reached through their connection. Now she whispered. Together, they shattered the suppression field like glass. Ice and alpha authority combined into something the council's technology couldn't contain, couldn't predict, couldn't stop. The battle erupted in an explosion of ice and fury. Bella moved like winter incarnate, ice spears flying from her hands to pin council operatives to trees. Frost creating treacherous footing that sent enemies sprawling. Walls of crystalline barriers rising to protect pack members from magical attacks. Kieran fought with alpha strength amplified by ice magic, moving faster than should have been possible, striking with force that sent armored wolves flying. His presence alone made enemy wolves instinctively submit. Around them, the pack fought as a unified force. Sienna danced between enemies too fast to track. The elderly man's camouflage magic made pack members effectively invisible, while young wolves called upon gifts they'd hidden for years. But it was Vera who truly showed them what centuries of magical knowledge could accomplish. Ice storms erupted from her hands. Binding spells froze enemies in place, and protective wards deflected magical attacks that should have been devastating. For a moment, it seemed like they might actually win. The council forces, expecting to face one untrained witch, were overwhelmed by coordinated resistance from an entire pack of gifted wolves. Then Elder Whitmore raised a device that pulsed with dark energy, and everything changed. "Enough!" she screamed, and the device in her hands erupted with magical force that wasn't meant to suppress. It was meant to sever. The energy slammed into Bella and Kieran like a physical blow. But worse than pain was the sudden absence where their bond had been. The connection that had been growing stronger every day, that had let them share power and strength and love, was being systematically torn apart. Bella screamed as half her soul was ripped away. Kieran collapsed to his knees, his enhanced abilities vanishing as the amplification broke around them. The tide of battle shifted as their combined power source disappeared. "A bond breaker," Vera gasped, horror clear in her voice. They brought a bond breaker. Bella had heard of such devices in her grandmother's stories. Ancient magical weapons designed to sever the connections between mates, to break bonds that had been forged by the moon goddess herself. They were forbidden, considered crimes against nature itself. But the council had brought one anyway. Fighting through the agony of separation, Bella tried to reach for her magic. But without Kieran's strength to stabilize it, without their bond to focus it, her power felt wild and dangerous again, more likely to hurt her pack than help them. "Surrender now," Elder Whitmore called out, triumph clear in her voice. "And we'll let your pack live. Continue to resist, and we'll break every bond, sever every connection until you're all just isolated, powerless wolves with nowhere to belong." Despair crashed over Bella like a frozen wave. This was exactly what the council wanted. To prove that magical bonds could be broken, that love and loyalty meant nothing against their technology and authority. She could see Kieran struggling to reach her, blood trickling from his nose where the bond breaking had caused internal damage. Their eyes met across the battlefield, and she saw her own pain reflected in his gaze. The pack was faltering. Several wolves had been captured, others were injured, and more council reinforcements were arriving by the minute. They were going to lose. "Little Moonlight." Vera's voice cut through the despair and chaos like a blade. "Do you remember what I told you about the difference between beauty and fury?" Bella looked at her grandmother, bloodied but unbowed, ancient power still crackling around her like protective lightning. "Winter's beauty doesn't make it less dangerous," Bella whispered, understanding flooding through her. "It makes people forget how deadly it can be." "Exactly. And you, my dear granddaughter, have been showing them your beauty." Vera's smile was fierce and proud and terrifying. "Perhaps it's time they met your fury." Bella looked around at her pack, her family, bloodied and captured and facing defeat because they'd tried to protect her. She thought about Kieran, struggling to breathe through the pain of their severed bond. She thought about all the magical wolves who would face the same fate if the council succeeded here. "You want to see what a real moon witch can do?" she called out to Elder Whitmore, her voice carrying a cold that made the autumn air itself freeze. "You want to break bonds and steal power and turn magic into a weapon of oppression?" The temperature plummeted so fast that council operatives' breath came out in panic puffs. Frost began forming on their weapons, their armor, their skin. "Then let me show you why the council was founded to contain us in the first place." Bella reached deeper into her power than she ever had before. Past the controlled ice, past the beautiful snow, into the ancient heart of winter itself. The part that killed as well as created, that ended as well as began. Around her, the very air began to crystallize. Chapter 11 complete. Word count, 2,987. Chapter 12. The silence before Bella's fury was complete and terrifying. Even the wind stopped, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what the granddaughter of Celine Ravencrest would unleash. "You want to know what the first moon witches could do?" Bella's voice echoed with otherworldly power, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You want to understand why the council was created to contain us?" The temperature plummeted beyond anything natural. Past freezing, past Arctic, into realms where the very air became dangerous to breathe. Council operatives began backing away, their weapons trembling in hands that were rapidly going numb. Then learn. What happened next wasn't magic in any recognizable sense. It was winter itself made manifest, primal and absolute and utterly merciless. Ice erupted from the ground in towering spires that pierced armor and pinned enemies where they stood. The air filled with crystalline death. Not the controlled spears of her training, but a blizzard of razor-sharp fragments that could flay skin from bone. Council operatives screamed as their magical devices froze solid and shattered. Their vehicles' engines seized as antifreeze turned to slush. Their weapons became too cold to hold, burning exposed skin with frostbite that spread like wildfire. Elder Whitmore raised her bond breaker again, but the device cracked and died as ice formed in its delicate mechanisms. For the first time since arriving, the Elder looked genuinely afraid. This wasn't the controlled woman who'd proven her abilities in trials and training. This was something primal, elemental, a force of nature given form and fury. Bella's eyes had gone completely silver. Frost crowned her hair like a diadem, and power rolled off her in waves that made reality itself shiver. "Magnificent," Vera breathed, her voice carrying both fierce pride and growing concern. "But little Moonlight, remember who you're fighting for. Don't let the fury consume what you're trying to protect." The words cut through Bella's rage like a knife through silk. Through the haze of elemental fury, she saw her pack, her family, watching her with expressions ranging from awe to terror. She saw Sienna, bloodied but unbowed. She saw pack members who'd fought beside her now backing away from the supernatural cold that radiated from her very presence. And she saw Kieran, struggling to stand despite the pain of their severed bond. His eyes fixed on her with absolute love and growing worry. "Bella," he called, his voice somehow carrying across the howling wind of her own making. "Come back to us. Come back to me." For a heartbeat, she teetered on the edge of a choice that would define everything. She could let the fury consume her completely, become the weapon of winter's wrath that could freeze armies and bring down governments. She could be the monster the council claimed magical wolves were destined to become. Or she could choose love, choose family, choose to be more than her power. "No," she said, and her voice carried a different kind of strength now. Not the overwhelming force of winter's fury, but the quiet power of a woman who knew exactly who she was and what she stood for. The blizzard didn't stop, but it changed. Instead of chaotic destruction, it became purposeful and protective. Ice barriers rose between council forces and pack members. Frozen ground created impassable terrain that cut off escape routes while leaving safe paths for her wolves. "This is what you fear," Bella said, her voice carrying clearly despite the storm. "Not the magic itself, but what it represents. Choice, freedom, the power to protect what we love instead of being told what to serve." Around them, council operatives were retreating toward their vehicles, those that could still move after being exposed to supernatural cold. But Elder Whitmore stood her ground, her face twisted with fanatic determination. "You think you've won?" she screamed over the wind. "This changes nothing. We have dozens of facilities, hundreds of operatives, thousands of ways to contain threats like you." She pulled another device from her robes. Not a bond breaker this time, but something that pulsed with dark energy and made Bella's magical senses recoil in instinctive revulsion. "A life drain. She's going to try to steal your power directly," Vera gasped in horror. Elder Whitmore activated the device, and suddenly Bella felt her magic being pulled away, drawn into the technological horror in the Elder's hands. But it wasn't just magic being stolen. It was life force, memories, everything that made her who she was. She tried to resist, but the device was designed specifically for this, to drain magical wolves dry and leave empty husks behind. Already, she could feel her consciousness beginning to fray at the edges. That's when Kieran did something that should have been impossible. Despite the bond breaker, despite the magical interference, despite every technological barrier the council had created, he reached across the space between them with pure force of will and love. The mate bond, wounded but not destroyed, flared back to life like a phoenix rising from ashes. Suddenly, Bella wasn't fighting the life drain alone. Kieran's strength flowed into her. Not through magical amplification this time, but through the fundamental connection that bound their souls together. The Elder's device, designed to drain one magical individual, couldn't cope with the doubled power source. The life drain device overloaded with a sound like breaking glass and exploding stars. Energy that had been meant to steal Bella's power backfired catastrophically, and Elder Whitmore screamed as her own life force was drained instead. She collapsed to the frozen ground, unconscious but alive, the device smoking and dead beside her. The sudden silence was deafening. The blizzard faded to gentle snowfall. The supernatural cold eased to merely winter crisp, and Bella found herself standing in the center of it all, feeling more herself than she ever had before. Kieran reached her first, his hands gentle as they cupped her face, his eyes searching hers for any sign of the fury that had nearly consumed her. "Are you?" he started. "I'm me," she said simply. "I chose to be me." Around them, the pack began to gather, checking on the wounded, securing the unconscious council operatives. Sienna approached with a grin despite the blood on her lip. "Well," she said cheerfully. "That was intense. Think they got the message?" Bella looked at the scene around them. Council vehicles disabled, operatives unconscious or fled, Elder Whitmore's technological horrors destroyed. But more than the physical victory, something fundamental had shifted. "They'll come again," she said quietly. "But not like this. Word will spread about what happened here. About magical wolves who fought back and won. About bonds that technology can't break and power that won't be contained." Vera approached, looking older than her years but radiant with pride. "You did exactly what needed to be done, little Moonlight. You showed them that magic isn't something to be controlled or stolen. It's something to be respected. But more than that," Bella said thoughtfully, her hand finding Kieran's, "we showed them that magical bonds, real ones, chosen ones, make us stronger, not weaker." In the distance, the surviving council operatives were loading their unconscious leader into a vehicle and preparing to retreat. But they moved differently now, with the weary respect of people who'd just learned that the world was bigger and more dangerous than they'd thought. "What happens now?" Kieran asked, his arms sliding around her waist in a gesture that was both protective and celebratory. Bella looked around at her pack, her family, the wolves who'd fought beside her, not because they had to, but because they chose to. She thought about other magical wolves in other territories, hiding their gifts and living in fear. "Now we build something better," she said, her voice ringing with purpose. "Sanctuaries for gifted wolves. Networks of support. A world where magical abilities are celebrated instead of feared. A rebellion," Sienna said with obvious enthusiasm. "A renaissance," Bella corrected with a smile. "A magical renaissance." Epilogue, 6 months later. The Ravenswood Ridge territory had tripled in size over the past 6 months as magical wolves from across the continent sought sanctuary and training. What had started as one pack's defiance had grown into a movement that was reshaping the werewolf world. Bella stood in the doorway of the new training center, watching as Vera led a group of young wolves through their first attempts at elemental magic. Frost flowers bloomed under one girl's touch while a boy called small flames to dance around his fingers. "Admiring your grandmother's work?" Kieran asked, sliding his arms around her from behind. "Admiring all of our work," she corrected, leaning back against his chest. "Look at them, Kieran. 6 months ago, they were hiding what they were, afraid of their own gifts. Now they're laughing as they learn, sharing techniques and stories, growing into their power with confidence instead of fear." "The council's been quiet," Kieran observed. "They're regrouping, figuring out how to handle a world where magical wolves aren't isolated and afraid anymore." Bella's smile was sharp as winter wind. "Let them. We're not the same wolves they tried to contain." Sienna approached from across the training ground, her expression bright with news. "The Vancouver Pack just sent word," she called out. "They want to establish a satellite sanctuary, and the Texas Wolves are asking for training instructors." The movement was spreading faster than any of them had dared to hope. Magical wolves who'd spent years hiding were coming forward, and traditional packs were opening their borders to gifted refugees. "Any regrets?" Kieran asked quietly, his question meant only for her. Bella considered the question seriously. She thought about the quiet life she might have had as Sebastian's Luna, never knowing her true power. She thought about the woman she'd been just months ago, broken, rejected, convinced she wasn't enough. "Only that it took rejection to set me free," she said finally. "Marcus throwing me away was the best thing that ever happened to me." "His loss was definitely my gain," Kieran murmured against her ear, making her shiver with pleasure. She turned in his arms, struck once again by how perfectly they fit together. His strength complementing her magic, his steady warmth balancing her elemental power. "What do you think?" she asked. "Ready to change the world with me?" His smile was warm and certain and full of promises. "I'm ready for anything." Happy snowflakes began to dance around them. Not from magic this time, but from the approaching winter that would be their first full season together. Real snow mixed with magical snow, and Bella laughed as Kieran caught the crystals on his tongue like a child. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now, without the fear and doubt that had once held her back. "Always and forever," he replied and kissed her as snowflakes swirled around them like a blessing. In the distance, more vehicles were arriving. Another group of magical wolves seeking sanctuary. Another family about to find their home. Bella Ravencrest had been rejected by the wolf who couldn't see her worth. Broken by a pack that feared her power. Nearly destroyed by a council that wanted to steal her magic. But she'd been saved by love, strengthened by family, and freed by the courage to embrace exactly who she was meant to be. Sometimes the greatest magic wasn't what you could destroy. It was what you chose to build. And as laughter echoed across Ravenswood Ridge territory, as magical children learned to control gifts they no longer had to hide, as wolves found family and purpose and the freedom to be extraordinary, Bella knew she'd found something worth every moment of heartbreak that had led her there. She was home. She was loved. She was exactly where she belonged. And her story,